Corruption and the consequences of corruption is something that's not exactly easy to measure. That's why oftentimes the numbers you see in corruption statistics aren't exactly accurate. Usually these figures are more focused on how the big number is than the actual number. So what exactly are the most reliable corruption statistics and just how reliable are they? Well, stay tuned because we'll cover it today in this video. But before we dive into it, if you're finding valuable my video, make sure you subscribe to FinCrime Agent and press the thumb up on this video. This will make it super easy for you to consume new videos going live on my channel, and in return will allow me to create more contents for you. Now, with the housekeeping done, let's jump right into today's video. Hi and welcome to FinCrime Agent, my YouTube channel where every week I publish a new video to boost your awareness about AML and financial crime prevention. As I mentioned in the intro, we'll be talking about corruption statistics in the video. When we talk about corruption, it includes many different acts. It includes bribery, embezzlement, it includes sextortion, and it includes nepotism. And that's one of the main reasons it can get so hard to measure. However, even though it gets challenging, people that contribute with their energy towards fighting corruption still try to make sure that their measurements express some accuracy in terms of the numbers. That means that measurement gives a sense of the corruption in absolute as well as in relative terms. However, if we talk about international organizations or civil society groups, their statistics are mostly cited to make the audience understand the magnitude of the corruption problem instead of the actual number. Sure, you might think there aren't exactly reliable corruption statistics, but at the end of the day, these statistics are meant more as a call to action instead of a guide to action. They aren't extremely accurate, but they're not exactly wrong either. There are some specific corruption statistics that have been cited since so long that at this point everyone thinks they are reliable, but what we'll discuss today is just how many of those corruption statistics are pretty problematic, but just gain popularity over time. And before getting into it, I want to take a moment and mention that all the insights I mentioned in this video are a review of some corruption-related metrics in line with the analysis that was released by U4's publication called The Credibility of Corruption Statistics. And you can find a link of this in the description of this video. Let's look at one of the most common corruption statistics. It said that approximately $1 trillion in bribes is paid worldwide every single year. This statistics has been cited many times by different United Nations officials and agencies. However, most of these organizations that cite this statistic never cite a source, and those that do mention a source have mentioned the World Bank as a source without giving much details on it. We don't know the specific document this statistic came from, we just know it somehow came from the World Bank. However, it said that Daniel Kaufman, the director of global programs at World Bank Institute, actually performed research to come up with this corruption statistic. Let's not get into the details, but if we talk about how he performed this research, sure, it's useful, but his research is not enough to make a global claim. This is also because he only covered 81 countries. Sure, we hear this corruption statistic quite often, but it actually can be considered quite problematic and not entirely reliable. Of course, that doesn't change the fact that bribery is awfully common around the world. Now let's look at another corruption statistic that we hear quite often. Let's see how reliable this one is. It said that approximately $2.6 trillion in public funds is stolen or embezzled every single year. However, we have no idea what the source of this statistic is. It has been cited at the UN and the African Development Bank. However, the first ever citation of this statistic was by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in a speech back in 2018. However, even then, he didn't mention a source. Sure, this statistic might have some truth to it, but it's completely unfounded and it definitely can be considered a reliable corruption statistic. So what's your opinion on the apparently reliable corruption statistics I have discussed so far? I'm sure there are many other statistics that I might not be able to discuss by the end of this video, but of course you can let me know in the comment down below, and together we can make a whole list of corruption statistics that have inadequate or inaccurate information to back them. Moving on, let's talk about the third corruption statistic I want to cover. It's heard that corruption costs the global economy approximately $2.6 trillion every year, which is around 5% of the global GDP. This corruption statistic has been cited in multiple speeches from the UN and the OECD. It has even been cited by the U4 publications, but where does this apparently reliable corruption statistic originate from? Well, the earliest mention was in a 2008 publication, Clean Business is Good Business. They attributed this statistic to the World Bank, but again, no specific source was given back then. Sure, it has been cited by the UN and even the OECD, so we are kind of forced to believe that is a reliable number, but it has absolutely no factual basis to support it. Also, to make it even more interesting, many sources keep repeating this 5% and $2.6 trillion. However, if you calculate that 5% of the global GDP, the last time this value equal to $2.6 trillion was back in 2006, and since then the statistic has been repeated without any factual support. Before we end the video, I have another corruption statistic that I want to discuss. We often hear that approximately 10 to 30% of the value of publicly funded infrastructure is lost to corruption every year. This statistic has appeared in a publication from the World Bank, IMF and the OECD. However, many of the organizations that cite this statistic based it on the October 2012 press release from the Construction Sector Transparency Initiative. However, no one clearly knows where they got the information from, and here is the interesting part. Some claims from the Construction Sector Transparency Initiative, or COST, attribute this statistic to the OECD. However, OECD mentioned that COST are the source of this statistic. So again, as reliable as it sounds, this corruption statistic is also pretty unfounded and cannot be really trusted in full. To conclude the video, let's take a moment and discuss how these statistics can be made more reliable in the future. Firstly, whoever cites a statistic should always cite the original source. Sometimes the source is cited as a document which got it from another document which got it from a third different document. That's why if someone cites a source, they should cite the original source, and if the original source can be found, the statistic shouldn't be cited in the first place. Secondly, the original source should always be read carefully. Many times the original source can be misunderstood and quoted in the wrong way, which gives rise to completely inaccurate statistics. To avoid that, you should be exactly sure of what you are quoting so you don't make a mistake. Anyway, these are just two pieces of advice from my end, and with that I come to the end of my video. Of course, I could only mention a few of the statistics from the U4's publication, and if you find interesting this video, I'm sure you really enjoyed this publication. As mentioned before, let me know in the comments some other corruption statistics that may sound reliable but really aren't. If this video was useful to you, you can show your appreciation and support my channel by subscribing to FinCrime Agent and press the thumb up on this video. Also, remember to check the description of the video to find useful links, including how to become part of our community on patreon.com. And lastly, thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed my video, and until next time, see you soon.